Hi, everyone. Welcome to Slam School. I'm Nicole, Vice President of Slam, and you'll notice on the bottom of your screen we've got a few people joining us today. First, I'm going to introduce the President of Slam. If you could wave, that's Robin on the bottom. And our Treasurer of Slam, Shelby. And we have two special guests today that I'll be introducing in just a moment. But again, if you're just joining Slam School for the first time, welcome. This has been going on for a few months now. And we're excited to have you join us. If you're interested in seeing any of the Slam schools that we've had in the past, all of our videos are archived on YouTube, and you can access everything by going to our website, slam.education. Slam is the Studies of Literacy and Multimedia Assembly, which is part of the National Council of Teachers of English. But we welcome all teachers from all disciplines, and we like to use this as really short, 30 minutes or less ways for you to know different ways you can get involved in civic engagement and different tools online to improve your practice. So we have two special guests with us today, both named Chad, so get ready because you're going to be confused about which one is which. If I could have Chad W. wave to us, Chad Walker. That's Chad Walker. And our other Chad, Chad Sansing. Hi, Chad. All right, so we're going to be talking about two things today. We're going to be talking about Cryptomancer, which is the coolest name ever for a game. Also sounds a little scary. We're going to learn about what it is and why you should use it. And then we're going to talk about Mozilla and the global sprint and ways you could use that in your classroom too. So I'm going to turn it over to Chad Walker first to get us started and tell us a little bit about Cryptomancer and what it is.
Sure, thank you. So Cryptomancer is a tabletop role-playing game, very similar to Dungeons and Dragons or other traditional tabletop role-playing games. But it just happens to focus on and teach information security principles, like real life information security principles. Actually, here's the book. So let's see if I can, there you go. So yeah. So a little bit of background first, if you're not familiar with tabletop role-playing games. The easiest way to describe it is, I would say it's like make-believe or pretend for grown-ups or sometimes teenagers. Except that disagreements and disputes are resolved with rules and dice rolls to keep things sort of organized. But yeah, it's just a shared narrative between players. And the goal is to have fun and tell a fun story. So yeah, how does Cryptomancer teach these concepts of information security? Well, it starts with the really basic, generic, fundamental fantasy things that everybody's used to. So like elves and dwarves and orcs and anything you would see in Lord of the Rings. And then it sort of inserts a magical version of the internet on top of that. And so now you have all these characters and creatures in the setting. They have to communicate with each other and use this magical internet to just do normal business or defeat the bad guys or run away from bad guys, so on and so forth. The game has this meta plot of this organization called the Risk Eaters, which is sort of like if the Spanish Inquisition met the NSA. So think of like Big Brother in a national security context, really coming after and hunting all the players. And so they actually have to use good security and online privacy practices to kind of save the day and avoid the bad guys. So that's kind of a high-level overview of what the project is about. Well, not the project; it's a book now. But so yeah, I mean, any questions from there, or can I pivot somehow?
Yeah. First of all, I think one question that teachers might have right off the bat. It seems a little counterintuitive to think about online privacy or online security through a tabletop game instead of doing something on the computer. And I think that's an important part of this. Could you talk a little bit about why it was important for it to be a tabletop game? And then I'll have another one for you.
Okay, sounds good. So first of all, I think it's fair to say that actually teaching and learning information security can be one of the most boring and awful things someone can endeavor to do. It's really hard to kind of grasp some of the concepts. It's not fun, it's not sexy, it's not interesting. So like any approach, I think that can reach people in a medium that they care about, that maybe they already play these types of games. So that was kind of the thinking. Also, people sort of need to understand the big picture conceptually about how things like cryptography works, so they can actually really use it effectively. They have to understand, how do I agree on an application I'm going to use with a friend to communicate with them secretly? How will we maybe exchange keys so we can encrypt or decrypt our messages with each other? How do I protect that so a third party doesn't get that key and use it to decrypt our secret messages? So I think if folks understand conceptually how those playing pieces work, then the technology part will sort of come naturally. It won't be nearly as scary.
And also, I think these ideas of encryption, of information security, I think for a lot of us, it feels very, like you said, a little difficult to understand. It feels a little beyond our expertise as teachers sometimes. Can you think of some of the ways for teachers wondering how they could integrate this into their curriculum? What are some issues, like popular culture issues that are out there right now, of why kids and teachers should be interested in information security right now? Why should they be thinking about it in school?
Sure. So it's sort of my personal belief that probably when it comes to younger folks, or maybe folks that aren't really politically engaged generally, to think really critically about matters of security and privacy, and not just because there are bad guys out there, because there are bad guys out there, but there are big questions that are happening in politics today that appeal directly to those issues. So whether it's our information being maybe gathered and sold from our internet service providers, or maybe the national security community doing certain types of surveillance that may be good or bad. I think it's important for people to, when they're young, start thinking about these topics as not black and white, not simple, because really decisions that are being made now are going to affect young people severely. So it's important they understand what's happening. So as soon as they can be more engaged, whether that's voting or through advocacy, they have the equipment to do so.
That's awesome. We're going to see if we have questions from the audience coming up soon, but for right now, let's also pivot over to Chad Sansing and talk a little bit about kind of building on this and some of the work that Mozilla is doing that would be interesting to teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very excited for this year's Global Sprint. The Global Sprint is like a 2-day flurry of contributions from around the world to open projects. So people who have projects that might be about science or curriculum development or physics, or in this case, privacy and security, and I'll talk a little bit more about the project in a moment, contribute their projects to this Global Sprint. There's a website I'll put in the chat here so folks can share it out a little bit later. And then whoever would like to contribute can kind of register for the sprint. They can go and browse the projects. They can decide which ones really appeal to them. Everything from teaching like college freshmen how to use GitHub to creating maybe offline games like Cryptomancer, but also maybe childhood or playground games that teach about privacy, security, or other web. That's what the sprint is all about. It's about community building through openness and through contribution to one another's work. Really supporting each other around the world for 2 days straight. It's pretty amazing. People generally work from 9 to 5, whatever their local time zone is, the organizers. And then if there's a local site, like maybe a research project at a university, people are invited in to work there face-to-face to hack on projects together. But virtual contribution is also perfect. We have contributors from all over the world on the Cryptomancer project and on several others. If you go to the Global Sprint site, and I'll dump that in the chat now so we can get that shared. If you go to the part about participants, you can look for where the sites are, and it's really inspiring to see how widely distributed they are and how many there are around the world this year. In the past, this project was really specific to the Mozilla Science Lab, and it was about open science and open data, but it's been open to all the Mozilla communities this year. So I'm excited. I'm excited to be wrangling some game-based projects around privacy and security, including the Cryptomancer challenge. And whether it's kind of like a good opportunity for professional development, my students are out of school, but people might still have students in classrooms. This might be a great end-of-year project. It's a cool way to get your feet wet, so to speak, with the ethos of openness at Mozilla.
Awesome. And I'm going to throw you the same question I threw to other Chad, which is kind of why you think, how you think teachers across different subject areas could find an in to talking about information security and these kinds of issues within their curriculum. If they're feeling like they have so much to do, where do I find room for this? How do you see ways in where teachers could think about talking about this with their students?
Yeah, for me, absolutely. For me, it really starts with just thinking about how you become aware of the privacy and security choices you face every day. And it's not even just the apps that you use. It's not even just maybe the computer you use at school or device you carry in your pocket. It's these moments in life when you're away from the classroom. Even you might show up on a surveillance camera, or you might make a purchase that's tracked online with a debit card or a credit card or a gift card. Privacy and security and just understanding those choices and managing your own identity is going to be hugely important. It's hugely important now, but it's going to be hugely important in the future. Those choices, your rights, what to do if you feel like your identity has been compromised, or your privacy has been invaded, if you've experienced harassment. That's another huge reason to think about privacy and security online. I just think as more and more of life is lived online, including civic life, we should understand the risks we're taking, the costs we're paying, but also the opportunities that we have related to strong privacy and security habits, or we sometimes call them online safety habits.
And we're going to be sharing the link that you shared with the larger community. And if somebody wants to know kind of the first way to get involved when the global sprint's happening on June 1st and 2nd, if they're feeling a little overwhelmed by all the options, what do you think are some good ways to kind of get your feet wet and get involved?
I'm going to put a couple more links here. I'm going to plug the kind of larger umbrella project that the Cryptomancer Challenge is a part of. We're calling it the Mozilla Privacy Arcade. And there are 4 different projects or challenges in there, each meant to invite kind of different forms of beginner participation. So the Cryptomancer Challenge is great at thinking about, how do I take this like improvisational story space, apply it to privacy and security habits that I could then transfer to my real life, my understanding. Like, it's just brilliant for that. And the game is written to teach players as they go. It's a wonderful, wonderful fit, a great partnership, I think. And Chad's done an amazing job of co-leading the project. We also have, like, for maybe students who are using like GameStar Mechanic or Scratch, we have a online privacy and security game jam challenge where you might prototype just a micro game, like a very short game, almost like, I don't know if anyone knows WarioWare, but it's for like Game Boy, and you can like press a button to pick your nose, like really short games that just teach one privacy skill like over and over to form a good habit. We have a really interesting project where we're trying to imagine, I don't know if people are familiar with escape rooms, but they're huge right now where I live. You and your friends go to a room, you pay to go into it, the facilitators lock you up, and then the lights come on. It's like a theme. You have to find your way out of like the dungeon or the parlor using clues in the rooms. We're trying to mash that up with the Internet of Things or connected devices. So like, what would happen if your door was connected to a sensor in a computer and didn't want to let you out of your home? What would happen if your car didn't want to start unless you got a certain kind of gas? Like, how would you get out of this room solving those puzzles? And there's even an offline games challenge where we're trying to think about, how could you teach this anywhere? How could you teach privacy and security in fun ways anywhere, including childhood games, playground games, other tabletop games? So I've put a blog post that we can also share into the chat talking about that kind of collection. And then I'm also going to share the specific post for Cryptomancer called What the Shardnet. And again, it tries to really lay out and invite participation for everyone from role-playing game beginners to like InfoSec nerds.
Awesome. And one more question before I see if Robin or Shelby wants to jump in. But we have some pretty progressive teachers that are watching our show, and I know that they believe in the idea of gaming as a really important way to learn. But for folks that are feeling like a little nervous about maybe telling their administrators that they're playing games with their students, just a brief from either of you, brief ideas about why you think it's so powerful to be learning about this kind of stuff through games.
Do you wanna go first, Chad, W?
Sure. So if you're talking about kids want to play games. They don't want to learn stuff. They want to be left alone and play games. So like, if you can give them games that also have some kind of education value or advocacy value, that's awesome. That's my short answer.
And I think games offer a lot of what we already want in the classroom, right? They offer a system, they offer steps that you can use to solve a particular problem. They give you a chance to be creative. Games like Cryptomancer touch on all the 21st century skills of collaboration and communication and problem solving and creativity. They also let you see how your students kind of self-organize when they're playing a game. What roles do they take? What ideas do they come up with? And it gives you a tremendous amount of informal assessment data about designing learning experiences for them in the future.
Awesome. Robin or Shelby, did you want to add anything?
Hey guys, so I spent some time in my teaching writing course for pre-service teachers this semester talking about role-playing games and how the act of playing games is a way of composing meaning as a way of writing. And they were really intrigued by the idea of integrating RPGs into their own classrooms. But I would love to hear from either of you what you think a good first step for a teacher who's a little nervous about that. What would be a good way to approach maybe a first game to try, or a first concept to think about with adolescents, middle schoolers, high schoolers?
Do you want to go, Chad, or I can? It doesn't matter.
I'm hesitating because that's a big question.
Sure.
So you can go first.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks. When I think about starting off, I think of a couple different things. Like, for me, teaching a system like Cryptomancer is a lot like the first Raspberry Pi or Arduino lesson you also might do with students. Like, you just want to demo everything, explain the parts, explain the pieces, explain the connections. Really model what you're doing, invite people up and around you to ask questions, to see, to touch, to feel. So you might bring out this game, you might just explain a few of the rules that you need to get started to really grasp the basic concept of the game and one or two of the privacy and security skills you're going to practice in it. And then, people can look at character sheets, they can touch the dice, they can roll the dice, make it like an unboxing experience, an experience of discovery for everyone. You could also approach it from another angle with a slightly different technology, and even pencil and paper or note cards, or you could use something like the Twine storytelling engine online. You could do a choose your own adventure narrative, right? That describes some of the privacy and security and online safety choices students might face in real life or in a setting like this, or in like a fantasy setting that's localized to where you live if you have a strong like local tradition of storytelling. And use those decision-making points and choose your own adventure as a way then to advance and grow into role-playing games where instead of just turning a page, now you're going to look back at your kind of character and think about your character skills and use some of the other rules and dice rolls to resolve situations.
Oh God, it's my turn, isn't it? So to sort of put folks at ease who may be new to this genre or new to like using it in a teaching sense, first of all, I think a lot of kids are already playing these games. They're already doing this. So chances are very good that there will be a considerable percentage of folks who are like, oh yeah, that's cool. I do that with my friends. In terms of folks who've never kind of seen a story game or a role-playing game work, there's probably a bunch of videos on YouTube and such. A lot of people record what's called actual plays, where they'll go through, they'll record a live session of them running a game for their players. So that would be probably a couple good techniques to get comfortable with the idea. But it's a very specific hobby, and honestly, people just in that hobby, not even in a teaching context, have been asking and deliberating for years, how do we engage people? How do we make a play session meaningful? How do we keep our players coming back? So the genre itself, or the hobby itself, needs to figure that stuff out too. It's an ongoing conversation. But yeah, to summarize, kids are already doing it, and there's a lot of videos on YouTube.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. I think there's a lot of good things to think about, and we do have a lot of progressive teachers, but I do know that when I worked with pre-service teachers and early career teachers, a lot of times it comes back to how can I justify how this covers the standards? And I know there's a lot more to teaching than the standards, but sometimes these new teachers don't know how to answer those questions. So I wondered if you had some answers for them.
Yeah, I think it's really important, right, to create space for yourself to experiment with this kind of teaching and learning and with games in the classroom. And a great way to do that is to answer the question you just asked. So, you know, I might not bring those up while we're unpacking the game or playing or making sure everyone feels comfortable, or like if we're developing our own systems for maybe like 2 students play 1 character and support each other, like just lots of ways to adapt it for your students' kind of social and emotional needs as they're learning the game, testing it out and seeing if it's for them. But after there's some practice and they see how it works, that's when you start talking about, all right, like now we're going to try to write an adventure. And here are the things include, and these are really important for privacy and safety. I want to see you address these things that speak to our tech standards. Of course, we're going to be using the writing rubric. So as you do this, think about organization. You know, the parts of the adventure might just be like chapters or sections in a paper that you're writing. We're going to use the same thing. We're going to use these familiar measures. And then, you know, even though it kind of schoolifies it and becomes an assignment, you can go back to things you've used in your classroom to assess students before, with which they're familiar, that feel fair to them, that feel known to them, and mash it up with this new experience. Just maybe don't start with the standards.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I want to wrap things up in our promised 30 minutes or less. So I want to thank Chad Walker and Chad Sansing. We're going to have all the links for you up on YouTube and on Twitter about how to access Cryptomancer and Mozilla's Global Sprint. If you're interested in any of our content, if you want to share this and watch the video later, again, you can go to our website at slam.education and learn more about how to join the SLAM assembly. Everyone's welcome to join, even if you're not an NCTE member. Stay tuned. We always have more SLAM schools coming up, and our next one will be coming up on Tuesday, June 6th at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll have more information coming out about that soon. There's also a way to sign up for our mailing list if you want to know more about these opportunities. But again, thanks to our Chads, thanks to Robin and Shelby, and we will see you next time.